$1,000. That number has been repeated so many times in personal finance content, in books, in YouTube videos, in blog posts, in Dave Ramsey's Baby Steps, that it has become gospel. Step 1. Save $1,000. Get that starter emergency fund. Then move on. And I understand why it became the rule. When it was first popularized, it was a genuinely useful starter target, a round number, an achievable milestone, a psychological win that helped people break the debt cycle. But here's the problem. The financial world has changed dramatically. Costs have changed. Inflation has changed. The job market has changed. And $1,000 as a meaningful emergency fund has not kept pace with any of it. Today, I'm going to show you what the actual financial data says about emergency costs in 2026. We're going to look at real numbers from real emergencies, real job search timelines, and real household expenses. And then, I'm going to give you a data-driven framework to calculate the right emergency fund for your specific situation, not a one-size-fits-all number that may leave you dangerously underprotected. Let's start with the data that makes this argument undeniable. Let's build the case with actual numbers, not opinion. Data, the real cost of common emergencies in 2026. The $1,000 rule was built on the idea that it would cover most common emergencies. Let's test that assumption against what emergencies actually cost today. Take your car. The average car repair cost in 2025, according to Kelley Blue Book, was $838. So yes, $1,000 barely covers that. But that's where the coverage ends. An emergency room visit costs between $2,200 and $3,100 out of pocket on average. And that's before we even talk about what happens if you need to stay overnight or have a procedure done. Your health insurance deductible, the amount you pay before your insurance kicks in, averages $5,304 for a silver plan in 2026 and $7,186 for a bronze plan, according to KFF data. An unexpected injury or illness means you could owe thousands of dollars before your insurance pays a single dollar. Even if you're insured, a study released in early 2026 found that nearly 98% of trauma patients had health insurance and still faced significant financial hardship from medical bills. Insurance reduces the risk of catastrophe, but the way private plans are currently designed still leaves most people heavily exposed to large, out-of-pocket costs. If you own a home, the numbers get even harder. An HVAC system replacement runs $5,000 to $12,000. A roof repair averages $4,500 to $9,000. A water heater replacement costs $1,100 to $2,800. A plumbing emergency runs $1,500 to $4,500. None of these are unusual. Every homeowner will face at least one of these in a 5 to 10-year window. Many will face multiple. So let me be direct. Of the most common real-world financial emergencies Americans face, $1,000 covers exactly one of them, and barely. Everything else blows through $1,000 immediately and keeps going. The $1,000 rule was created in a different cost environment. It has not been updated to reflect the financial reality of 2026. The job loss scenario completely breaks the $1,000 rule. The original purpose of an emergency fund, the deepest, most important purpose, was never about covering a single unexpected bill. It was about surviving job loss, keeping your life running while your income disappears. So let's look at what job loss actually looks like in 2026. According to a United Way NCA survey conducted in early 2026, the average job search now lasts 6.6 months. That's not a pessimistic estimate. That's survey data from 1,000 recent job seekers. Other estimates put the figure between 3 and 5 months depending on industry and career level. What we know for certain is that as of March 2026, 25% of unemployed workers have been searching for more than 27 weeks. That's more than 6 months. For 1 in 4 unemployed Americans, the job search takes more than half a year. And that doesn't include the hiring delay. The average time to hire has grown to approximately 42 days in 2026. So even after you receive a job offer, you may wait another 6 weeks before your first paycheck arrives. Now let's do the math honestly. Median essential monthly expenses for a U.S. household in 2026. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, car payment, minimum debt payments, run approximately $3,500 to $4,500 per month. If you use the conservative estimate of a 4-month job search and $3,500 in monthly essentials, surviving that job loss requires $14,000. $1,000 covers 8 to 9 days of average household expenses. 8 to 9 days. Not 3 months. Not 1 month. Not 2 weeks. 8 to 9 days. That is not an emergency fund. That is a long weekend. If your job search takes the average 6.6 months and your household costs $3,500 per month to keep running, you need more than $23,000 just to survive the unemployment period without going into debt. A $1,000 fund covers less than half of 1 month. Inflation has quietly shrunk every dollar you've saved. Here's a dimension of this problem that almost never gets discussed. Even if $1,000 was enough in 2018 or 2019, the same $1,000 is worth significantly less today. Consumer prices rose dramatically between 2020 and 2025. Housing, groceries, utilities, medical care, and auto repair all cost substantially more than they did when the $1,000 rule was being popularized across personal finance books and YouTube channels. Research from 2026 shows that a household that needed $9,000 to cover 3 months of expenses in 2020 now needs approximately $11,500 for the same 3 months. A 28% increase. Even people who correctly built a 3-month emergency fund 5 years ago and haven't touched it are now effectively underprotected. The cost of life has moved. Their savings target hasn't kept pace. This applies directly to the $1,000 rule as well. $1,000 in 2018 had more purchasing power than $1,000 in 2026. The rule has stayed static, while the cost of survival has climbed. The data shows Americans know $1,000 isn't enough. Here's the final piece of evidence. When you ask Americans directly what they think their emergency fund should be, nobody says $1,000. A U.S. News 2026 financial wellness survey asked Americans how much they would ideally have saved for emergencies. The median answer was $10,000. The average target was nearly $50,000. And yet, 43% of Americans in that same 2026 survey cannot cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. Not because $1,000 is the right target, but because they haven't even reached the starting line. The median actual emergency fund balance in 2026 is $5,000, exactly half of what the same survey reported the year before. Emergency fund balances are shrinking, not growing, even as costs rise. So on one hand, most Americans can't even hit $1,000. On the other hand, the Americans who do have savings universally know that $1,000 isn't where the story ends. The data from both ends of the spectrum tells the same story. The $1,000 rule, as a final destination, doesn't match the financial reality we're living in. Now I want to be honest with you, because I'm not going to present a one-sided argument without acknowledging the strongest counterpoints. The $1,000 rule didn't become popular by accident. It solved a real problem for real people, and in the right context, it still does. Why starting at $1,000 still makes sense. First, it's achievable. For someone who is overwhelmed by debt, living paycheck to paycheck, and has never saved anything, saving $1,000 is a concrete, winnable goal. The psychological power of hitting that first milestone is real and documented. People who reach $1,000 are far more likely to continue saving than people who are told to hit $15,000 or $20,000 from scratch. The entry point matters. Second, it does protect against the most common single-event emergency. The average car repair in 2025 was $838. If your transmission dies and you don't have $1,000, that's a credit card charge at 21% interest. If you do have $1,000, you absorb the hit and move on. For that specific common scenario, the $1,000 rule does exactly what it was designed to do. Third, the framework itself was never designed to stay at $1,000. Dave Ramsey's baby steps begin with $1,000. But baby step 3 is the full 3 to 6 month fund. The problem is not the framework. The problem is that millions of people treat the first step as the finish line and never continue the journey. Research from 2026 found that having at least $2,000 in emergency savings is associated with a 21% increase in overall financial well-being. Even modest increases beyond $1,000 create measurable positive outcomes. So the direction is right. The destination is just further than most people are told. Here is the nuanced truth. $1,000 is a valuable and necessary starting milestone. The problem is when it becomes the ending milestone. The data shows it is deeply insufficient for the emergencies that actually derail financial lives: job loss, medical crises, major home repairs. And that gap is exactly what we need to close. If $1,000 is wrong, what's right? The honest, data-backed answer is, it depends on your specific life. And I mean that not as a vague cop-out, but as the most genuinely useful thing I can tell you. Let me show you how to calculate your real number precisely. Step 1. Define what your emergency fund is actually for before you pick a number. You need to answer a question most people skip. What exactly am I building this fund to handle? There are two fundamentally different types of financial emergencies, and they require different amounts of money. Type A emergencies are what I call event emergencies. These are single unexpected costs: a car repair, a medical bill, an appliance breakdown, an emergency home repair. They have a beginning and an end. They cost a specific amount. Once paid, the crisis is resolved. Type B emergencies are income emergencies: job loss, disability, the sudden loss of household income. These are not single events. They are extended periods without income. They are the most financially devastating type of emergency, and they require the most protection. Your emergency fund needs to handle both. Event emergencies set your floor. Income emergencies set your ceiling. Let's calculate both. Step 2. Calculate your event emergency floor. Look at your specific life. What are the most likely single event emergencies you could realistically face in the next 12 months? If you own a car, budget for potential repairs. The average is $838, but older vehicles, high-mileage cars, and luxury vehicles regularly run $1,500 to $3,500 for a single repair visit. Don't plan for average. Plan for your vehicle's actual profile. If you own a home, the stakes are higher. HVAC systems, plumbing, roofs, and water heaters all fail without warning and cost thousands. A safe event emergency floor for homeowners is $5,000 to $10,000 minimum. Home systems don't fail in isolation either. One bad year can bring multiple large repairs within months of each other. If you're a renter with a car, your event emergency floor is lower, primarily medical and vehicle related. A $3,000 to $5,000 event floor is reasonable protection for most renters. And critically, medical exposure. If your health insurance deductible is $5,304 for a silver plan or $7,186 for a bronze plan, your emergency fund needs to be able to cover that deductible in full. A medical emergency that empties your savings account and leaves you with nothing is not a cushion. It's a cliff edge. The rule of thumb for your event emergency floor is this: at minimum, match your health insurance deductible. Then add the most likely single vehicle or home repair cost on top of that. That combined number is your event floor. and it is almost certainly not $1,000. Step 3. Calculate your income emergency ceiling. This is the bigger number, and it is determined by two variables: how much your household costs per month and how long you might realistically need to survive without income. For your monthly essential expenses, list only the non-negotiable costs: rent or mortgage, utilities, electricity, gas, water, internet, groceries, not dining out, insurance premiums for health, car and home or renters, minimum debt payments, transportation, gas, car payment if applicable. Add only those. That total is your monthly survival number, not your full lifestyle budget, just what it costs to keep your life running at the baseline. Now, how many months should you cover? This depends on your specific employment situation, and the data gives us direct guidance. If you have a dual-income household with stable jobs and in-demand skills, 3 months is a reasonable starting point. You have a backup income if one job disappears, and your skills make re-employment more predictable. If you have a single-income household, especially with dependents, 6 months is the appropriate target. If your income disappears entirely, there is no backup. The average job search runs 3 to 6.6 months. A single-income household needs to cover that full range. If you are self-employed or work freelance, the target is 9 to 12 months. Your income is already variable and can gap between clients or contracts. An emergency on top of an income gap can be financially catastrophic without a substantial cushion. If your industry is currently experiencing layoffs, technology, media, retail, and several others in 2025 and 2026, target 6 to 9 months. Job searches in volatile sectors take longer than average, and competition for open roles is significantly higher. If you are over 50, the data is clear. Age discrimination in hiring is documented, and average unemployment duration is longer for workers over 55. A 12-month target is appropriate protection. Once you know your monthly essentials and your coverage period, the math is straightforward. Monthly essential expenses multiplied by your coverage months equals your real emergency fund target. Here are 3 concrete examples. If your essential monthly expenses are $3,800 and you are a single-income household, your target is $3,800 times 6 months, which equals $22,800. If your expenses are $2,600 and you have 2 stable incomes, your target is $2,600 times 3 months, which equals $7,800. If you are self-employed with $4,200 in monthly essentials, your target is $4,200 times 9 months, which equals $37,800. These are real numbers, not $1,000. This is what the data says you actually need to be protected against the emergencies that can genuinely derail a financial life. Step 4. Where to keep it in 2026. Your emergency fund has 2 requirements that might seem to conflict, but don't have to. It needs to be safe and accessible, but it should also earn something while it sits there waiting to be needed. In 2026, high-yield savings accounts resolve both requirements cleanly. The top accounts are currently paying 4.0% to 4.10% APY. The national average at traditional savings accounts is 0.39%. On a $15,000 emergency fund, a high-yield account earns approximately $600 per year. A traditional savings account earns about $58 per year. That's a $542 annual difference. Money you're simply leaving on the table if you're using the wrong account type. Open your emergency fund at a separate bank from your checking account. Keep it in that high-yield savings account where the money earns a solid return, remains fully accessible within 1 to 2 business days, and carries a slight friction of transfer that prevents casual dipping for non-emergencies. Do not invest your emergency fund in the stock market. Markets drop 30% or more periodically, and they tend to drop hardest during economic downturns, which are also the most likely times you might need to access this money. A $20,000 emergency fund that drops to $13,000 in a market crash right when you lose your job is not a safety net. The emergency fund is insurance. Keep it safe, liquid, and earning a real return through a high-yield savings account. I know what some of you are thinking right now. That target number is enormous. I can barely save $100 a month. How am I supposed to build $22,000? I hear you. But here's what I need you to understand. The size of your target doesn't change how you start. You start the same way regardless, one milestone at a time, using a system that makes progress automatic rather than dependent on willpower. Phase 1. Hit $1,000 first. Yes, even after everything I've said in this video, I still want you to start at $1,000. Because it is achievable. Because it does protect you from the most common single-event emergencies. And because the psychological momentum of hitting that first milestone makes everything that follows more likely to happen. Get to $1,000 first. Then keep going. The problem was never starting at $1,000. The problem is stopping there. Phase 2. Build to 1 month of expenses. Once you hit $1,000, shift your focus to a full month of essential expenses. This is the first milestone that actually provides meaningful protection against the income emergencies we discussed. A sudden job loss gives you 30 days to breathe, plan, and act without panic. For most households, this is $2,500 to $4,500, achievable within a few months of intentional saving. Phase 3. Build to your full target systematically. After 1 month of coverage, set your full target using the framework from Step 3. Divide the remaining amount needed by the number of months you want to reach it in. That's your monthly contribution. Automate it. Schedule a transfer from your checking account to your high-yield savings account on the same day your paycheck arrives. Treat that transfer like a bill that cannot be skipped, not like discretionary money you save if something is left over. A few specific strategies to accelerate your progress. The average U.S. tax refund in 2025 was approximately $3,100. If you direct your refund entirely to your emergency fund, you can add 1 full month of coverage in a single transaction. Similarly, any unexpected income, a work bonus, overtime, a cash gift, should go directly into the emergency fund until you hit your target. Not spending money. Not investing money. Emergency fund first. Redirecting $200 per month from dining out and unused subscriptions adds $2,400 to your emergency fund per year. 1 intentional year of tighter spending builds a meaningful cushion. A consistent side income of $300 to $500 per month, dedicated entirely to the emergency fund, can build a full 6-month fund within 2 to 3 years at average household expense levels. Phase 4. Revisit your target every year. Your emergency fund target is not a number you calculate once and then ignore. Life changes. Expenses change. Inflation changes your purchasing power every year. Your employment situation changes. Review your target every January. Recalculate your monthly essential expenses. Reevaluate your job market risk and coverage period, and adjust the target accordingly. The same household that needed $18,000 for a 6-month fund in 2022 needs approximately $23,000 for the same coverage in 2026, a 28% increase driven entirely by inflation. If you built your emergency fund a few years ago and haven't revisited the target, your real protection has quietly shrunk. Update the number. Close the gap. Let me close with the complete picture. The $1,000 emergency fund rule is not wrong as a starting milestone. It is dangerously wrong as a finishing milestone. Real emergencies cost more than $1,000. Health insurance deductibles average $5,304 to $7,186. HVAC replacements run $5,000 to $12,000. A single medical event can cost more than 10 times your starter fund before insurance pays anything. Job loss takes far longer than most people expect. The average job search in 2026 runs 3 to 6.6 months. $1,000 covers 8 to 9 days of average household expenses. That gap is the difference between weathering an emergency and being buried by one. Inflation has eroded every emergency fund that hasn't been updated. A fund built 5 years ago has lost roughly 25% of its real purchasing power. The cost of survival has risen. Most savings targets haven't followed. Your real number is monthly essential expenses multiplied by your coverage period. 3 months for a dual-income household with stable employment. 6 months for a single-income household. 9 to 12 months for the self-employed or those in volatile industries or over the age of 50. Keep it in a high-yield savings account earning 4% or more. Review it every year and adjust as your life changes. Here is your one action for today. Calculate your monthly essential expenses right now. Just add them up. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, minimum debt payments, transportation. That number multiplied by your coverage period is your real emergency fund target. Write it down. That is the number you are actually working toward, not $1,000. Drop your target number in the comments, or just comment calculating now if you're working it out. I want to know where this community stands. Subscribe for weekly personal finance content built on actual data, not outdated rules. See you in the next one.